Hey guys, welcome back to the This is Soul Skate Shop YouTube channel. And today we're going to talk about the history of the Soulplate. A Soulplate is a part of an aggressive skate, and an aggressive skate is a skate that you can grind on. Grinding is like sliding over a rail, and the first grind was done in 1993 by Chris Edwards, and it's shown in the movie Dare to Air. The grind was done on skates that were not really supposed to be able to grind on. They were just normal recreational skates. I actually have one right here. It was done on this skate, the Rollerblade TRS, and it's the same skate kind of that we've been stuck with from the early 80s when the Rollerblade brand first came out with their inline skates till somewhere in the mid 90s where when the hardware revolution kind of started. So for 15 years of this sport we had the same skate and it didn't really change that much. It started out with this one. This is the original one. You can see that the black plastic has kind of like become white a bit. I'm afraid to let it fall because if it falls it will probably shatter to pieces because the plastic is now 40 years old, probably this one. And this is our classic. It's so classic that it's still being made today. I always compare it to the Converse All-Star shoe. It's kind of like a timeless design. And in a way, it's the design where most other inline skates are based on. Nothing much changed for 15 years, except for the original one didn't have the buckle. So this one has the lacing all the way to the top. And I think it was around 1987 when the first version with the buckle came. And that meant that the skate was suddenly like strong and stable enough to do some shredding with, to do some cool tricks with. And so for a couple of years, from 87 to the early 90s, this is when inline skating really took off and people started to do tricks on their skates. After the first grind was done, the hardware kind of like needed to change a little bit. And you see that the next version of this skate kind of like had the first adaptation to grind on, and that was the grind plate. Let me show you a grind plate. Here. This is an example of a grind plate, and here you can see it bolted on a boot. So what the grind plate does, it enforces the boot so that it doesn't break after a couple of grinds, and it creates a little groove here for you to lock on if you're on a rail. The very first grind plate that was used was this little rollerblade wrench, and it came coincidentally in the box of the first rollerblade inline skates, and you could just coincidentally mount it exactly here on this part here, and yeah, it would function as the first grind plate. Later on, the first like aftermarket industry, early 90s, developed, and brands like Scribe and CDS Detroit made their own grind plates, and 50/50 as well, which we still sell. Here's a Senate grind plate, and I really like this red one. It's very iconic from the Roaches M12. So that's the kind of like the history of the grind plates. Then the next step is to enforce the frame. So here you see a version of the M12, and it has a lot thicker frame walls. And the next step is, of course, the Soulplate. So that's what you're here for, right? To hear a lot about the Soulplate. And you see that people started to grind not only in the middle of the frame, but also on the side. And to protect this, the first Soulplates were added on to the original Rollerblade TRS and Roaches M12 boots like this. There was a front plate here, but there were also heel plates in the back. This Soulplate, by the way, is why This is Soul is called This is Soul. Because in the beginning, when I started the company, like mid zeros, so like 2006, I started the company. I was modding a lot of skates, and I was modding the Soulplate part of the skates the most. You could say that I was like a specialist Soulplate customizer back then. This is Soul right now still is the most specialized aggressive inline skate shop, and now also freestyle inline skate shop in the Netherlands. And we do it with a lot of passion from the soul. So that's why This Is Soul is called the way it is. Fun fact. Here is another example of an added-on Soulplate, which kind of like broadens the frame here so that you can grind on it. But it still is the normal boot that we're used to with an added-on Soulplate. The next step within inline skating is that in like 1997, 98 era, there was suddenly a hardware revolution. So suddenly a lot of brands started to jump into the sport. They were brands like Salomon, Fila, K2, Oxygen, Sabotage and USD, Bauer. And they all came into the market with different type of molds, and they had integrated sole plates. And what I mean with integrated sole plate is that the skates that we had before were just modified recreational skates, and they also had a recreational version of that skate. And then later with the integrated sole plates, there were skates like this is the USD skate, and it really has the sole plate as a part of the design of the boot that the sole plate is there. So here is, for example, the out skate, and it has even a flat sole plate, and the sole plate is really part of the design. All right. Here is the K2, also kind of a flat sole plate and definitely part of the design. This is all from the same era of skating. And the Bauer skate, which is really flashy, and it's the basis of the current day 908 skate. You see that it's not the same mold, but they are very similar in the design. It's a fun looking skate. Here is the rollerblade version of a skate like this. Also a flat sole plate, with the sole plate being a part of the actual design of the skate. And here is the Fifth Element skate. Well, this is actually the Kuti, but the Fifth Element has the same sole plate system, straight sole plate, and you see that it's definitely part of the design of how the skate is built up. Here's the Fila skate. And the Fila skate has something interesting I'm going to talk about later as well. This is the Salomon skate. This is a later version of the Salomon skate, but the sole plate, the way it looks and the way it functions has been the same for Salomon from the beginning in like 97, 98 to when they stopped in 2005. What all these skates are actually missing though is the backslide groove. So now I'm going to tell you about that. You can grind in the middle of the wheels. You can grind on the side. This is the sole. But if you grind in the middle, then aggressive skaters like to tilt their foot to the side. And this is called a Royale, or a torque, a full torque, a Fahrvergnügen, or a backslide. So one of those names is the backslide, and that's the name if you do it on one foot. It's called a backslide grind. So this little area here is called the backslide groove. And because all the skates that I just showed you were kind of like developed in an era where the trick vocabulary was still like not actually developed, it's kind of lacking the final version of the backslide groove. You see that this skate has a part of the shell, the kind of like a reinforcement of the backside area, but it's something totally different as the Fila skate. It has more of a little cup where it like holds you if you're in this position, like it makes you hold the position. And Fila got it correctly. It was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, aggressive skate that had like a type of backslide groove that you can still see in the modern version of the aggressive skates today. The next step in the hardware evolution was to put in the backslide grooves, and let me show you. This is an old version of the racers, and it did not have any protection for the backslide groove. And this is a modern version of the racers, and it has an added on piece here, which is the perfect backside groove. The racers actually is a really nice example of how the backside groove evolved, because they had multiple steps from the one I just showed you to this. So the backside groove developed from not being there to completely being the way that we want it now with the little cup. And this kind of like development ended in about 2003, when the full Soulplate kind of like was what it is today. And all Soulplates, if you look at a boot, an aggressive skate boot from the bottom, will look something like this. It has two parts here for the sole and then an integrated backslide groove. But if you look at the racers, you see that it has a separate block here. Still, the general dimensions are exactly the same. So in about 2003, the Soulplate was kind of like in its final form in a way, and it's been like this for almost 20 years now. So when you pick a Soulplate for yourself, just rest assured there's, in the end of the day, not that much difference anymore between these different Soulplates. Let's talk a little bit about the Soulplate width, because you want to lock on a rail and not slide off, but there is something that is too wide of a Soulplate, because if the Soulplate's really wide and you go into a turn, then it hits the ground and you fall. Salomon came out in like 97, 98 era, and it didn't have a really wide Soulplate back then. So they added in about, I think 2002-3, they added a Soulplate. It's called a wide body, and it was an extra piece that you can put on the existing boots to make the Soulplate extra wide. This, however, people didn't really like, and a lot of people didn't put on the wide body or took it off if they bought a skate that came with it. This shows that there's something to be said for a Soulplate to be too wide. For me personally, I skate the Racer Shift a lot right now. I also have different skates, but this is the one I use the most, because I like that you can take off the Soulplate and change the frames like this, so that I can have a freestyle frame and an aggressive frame and swap it around. And the Racer Shift is, I think, one of the widest Soulplates right now on the market. For me personally, it was too wide, so I did a lot of cess slides. And a cess slide is if you slide on the ground on your boot, and the cess slide will wear down your Soulplate. So I did a lot of cess slides to wear down my Soulplate to make it easier to do my tricks with. I like it better like this. In the end of the day, if you pick out a skate, I would not hyper focus on the Soulplate width too much if I were you. Pick a good fitting skate. That's the most important thing. Pick a skate that you like the looks of. There's a lot of reasons to pick a certain skate, and I think the width of the Soulplate is definitely one of the last ones on the list. Don't pay too much attention to it, because the modern day Soulplates are all pretty much well established and just fine. All right, so we talked a lot about the history of the Soulplate now. We talked about how the current state of the Soulplate is right now. But what about the future of Soulplates? The last things in the development of the Soulplate that we can pay attention to, and then we can maybe make a little prediction about where it's going, is that the Soulplates are becoming stronger and stronger and more a part of the boot. So a good example of this is the USD Aeon, where the USD Aeon is like an integrated Soulplate to the boot, which makes it really strong. It's actually not only integrated to the boot, but also to the frame. They like really reworked the design of a skate, because normally all these parts also have mounting bolts, and the position of these mounting bolts can like limit the options where you can put the wheels, because the mounting bolts are usually right about here, and then because the Aeon doesn't have those mounting bolts, they could shift the wheels more to the outside to create a bigger groove in the middle, so that you have more space and less wheel bite if you grind. The Aeon is a perfect example of a like the future of aggressive inline skating, where it's just really strong. Another good example of this is the Racer skate, where before you had the Racers SL and now you have the Racers Shift. The Racers SL has a lot of like backslide plate and sliders and all sorts of different parts, and then the Racer Shift only has one part over there. And another example is the USD7, where USD7 before had like a Soulplate that was only mounted with 2 bolts, and then later on they added multiple bolts to have it fixed more so that it's a better connection. So you want to have your Soulplate connected to the rest of your skate as tightly as possible so that it's really responsive. One thing we didn't discuss in this video yet is the material of the Soulplate and how fast it slides. Please tell me in the comments which one of your own setups was the one that slides the best, so that other people reading it can learn from your experiences. We make a new video like this every week, so if you want to see the next one, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye! You want to do it again, or oh, I don't have it. Ja, hier, oké. Shit, this is not the foute voorbeeld omdat het niet... This is a part of an aggressive inline skate, and I'm just gonna cut it off.